So all of us know that the ECG is a universal tool. It's inexpensive. It is widely utilized. It allows the physicians to diagnose various structural and electrical abnormalities. It is low cost. It's widely available. It's portable. But one of the key things that I have learned as I have been looking through is at least a third of the ECG interpretations that we perform are erroneous. And I'm sure in multiple studies it's been shown. So a lot of these interpretations are comparing primary care physicians as well as cardiologists. It's like a bunch thing. Whereas if you look at cardiology community in specific, about 9 to 10% of the interpretations are inaccurate. And so this kind of gives you a little bit of pause for thought. And given the continuous evolution of the CIE algorithms that help us interpret, and also the software that is utilized, it actually makes you think that we need more uniformity, we need more standardization, especially regarding the definitions, the minimum wave requirements, which are obviously taken into account when any of the EKG reads come by, as well as the measurement procedures. So there are multiple examples that have been given by the prior speakers about the AI tools. I'm blown away by all the speakers who have talked about how they are able to utilize AI. It allows rapid interpretation of ECGs, obviously, because of the specific signatures that are unrecognizable to people like us who interpret the ECGs. And multiple groups have large ECG databases that are linked to clinical data sets. And so a lot of people in the room here should know that there are widely available, freely available ECG data sets that they can utilize to build your algorithms. And a lot of you have heard about this. How do you develop a generic CNN using a 12-lead ECG? So you take a 12-lead ECG, the digital recording in an XML platform. It corresponds to our amplitude, and that's given a signal of 1 or 2. And then you put it into a convolutional layer, and then that feeds upon itself to be able to generate the data that we need and the model output that you define. And based on the pooled data, you can actually use it to study whatever you want to. So I look at ECG interpretation into two buckets when you're utilizing AI. You can either use the automated ECG interpretation that's widely available and that is currently utilized by all of us in the room. And that is typically ML with deep learning for rapid interpretation. And then taking it to the next step using CNNs to determine the signals and patterns that are unrecognizable to the human eye. And then you can extract, you can interpret the raw data to come up with predictability models. And so to utilize it for diagnosis of LV dysfunction, for example, to look at the utility in diagnosis of HOCM that we heard in the earlier lectures, identification of patients at a high risk to develop AFib, even though they're in sinus rhythm. These are such exciting possibilities that exist that we didn't have even 5 or 10 years ago. And day by day, prediction of sudden cardiac death is extremely exciting because we may be looking at the ECGs, not even notice that there are abnormalities in the QT interval, yet there are triggers that tell you, hey, this patient is at a higher risk for sudden cardiac death. And diastolic dysfunction, obviously, is another thing. And our group at Rutgers, especially with Dr. Yanamala, who's there, who is a scientific officer, and she's the director of cardiovascular science, we actually developed GAN models to extract tissue Doppler from ECG, determine the diastolic dysfunction, and also predict mortality. And the paper is going to be actually coming out in Nature just within the next couple of weeks or so. So there are multiple examples of what we can utilize these for. What I also didn't realize is the mortality prediction utilizing GANs is almost as strong as looking at severe LV dysfunction, which is something that we, as a clinician, I personally never even thought about the mortality effect. This is shown both in HFrEF as well as the HFpEF population. So very interesting stuff that is coming out. And then I thought about the title that was given to me, what are the challenges? And I noticed challenges at multiple levels. At the level of AI models, data quality and biases are something we need to be very aware of. So if you have limited or unbalanced data sets, obviously you cannot take the output and apply it to general population that you would see. The labeling errors, we have talked about that just within the past couple of sessions. Data standardization issues currently exist, and so this is something that we need to be focusing on. And variability because of patient-specific factors. So rotation of the heart, patient's innate electrical activity, all of these are also going to be biasing some of the data quality. And then age, race, and gender is going to also create a lot of unbalanced data sets. So it is really crucial to look at the data sets that you have to look for generalizability. Then you look at model generalizability and robustness. So we talked a little bit about the overfitting. You certainly don't want to be overfitting the training data. And you have to be careful about sensitivity to noise and artifacts. And I would say in most labs, about at least 5 to 10% will have movement artifacts, some kind of noise. So when you look at a model, you have to take all of that into account. You have better train your models to understand noise from the real ECGs. And then you have to look at the handling variability as well. And obviously, external validation, as we have heard before, is extremely crucial. Then you have to think about the continuous learning and adoption. All the AA models must adapt to newer clinical guidelines. And every 2 to 3 years, we have a lot of guidelines and the updates. And you cannot use a model that has been trained on old guidelines. So we need to be continuously training these models if you want to use them. And then the model drifts is something we heard earlier on. So whenever you have model drifts, you have to make sure, again, continuous training is there in place. So that can be addressed as well. And with a model drift, you should understand that the model output is never going to be as robust. So something to keep in mind, if you have an older model, that may not be applicable to what you're looking at this time. And then federated learning is something that we touched on this morning. And federated learning is crucial, I think. And then you have to develop AI performance monitoring systems. And that is NVIDIA and the others actually have some of these models, monitoring systems. So those should be things that we should be thinking about. And integration with EHR. It should seamlessly integrate. And luckily, Dr. Elias has mentioned how they were able to integrate into the EHR. We have a 13-hospital system, and I have to say, just getting through the integration is extremely tough. And we have been having a lot of roadblocks with that. Compatibility with different ECG machines, data formats, and DHR outputs is also something we should be thinking about. Then what are the challenges at the clinician level? And we have touched on this as well. We talked a little bit about black box. Would I be able to utilize the output from an algorithm if I don't understand it correctly? Or if it is giving me a disparate answer to what I'm thinking about, would I be able to believe the AI output? So this actually talks about explainable AI. So how do we utilize that? And how do we logically integrate that into day-to-day practice? And then we have to combine rule-based logic along with the DLs. And we have to provide confidence scores as well. As a clinician, if I don't have a confidence score, I think it is one of the ways that I may not be able to utilize the information in a critical manner. And then remember, there's going to be workflow disruptions with any new technology that you want to integrate. So it should complement rather than replace. It should avoid time delays. It should actually avoid complexity. It shouldn't add more time to what I'm doing. And we cannot be over-reliant. We still have to use a physician brains. Just because AI has given you an output doesn't mean you're not a clinician. And then lastly, the increased screen time. If I have more people needing glasses, they're going to blame it on the AI as well. So just think about all of these. And then at the level of the health system, the cost and infrastructure is something that people have to be aware of. When there is a high initial investment for AI deployment, most of the hospital systems are going to back away and say, hey, we have to think about this. Computational resources are crucial because this is going to require real-time AI processing for anything we do. And then we need to have experts to implement real-time performance monitoring because you don't want any declines in accuracy. You certainly don't want to be giving patients the wrong information. You don't want to be having false negatives. So those are all the things we need to think about. And we need to have adaptive AI models without needing complete retraining so they can retrain themselves. So these algorithms have to be thought out carefully and deployed carefully. And we have to ensure that the models are compatible with all the regulatory stuff, right? So FHIR, HL7 standards for seamless integration into EHR. And then real-time processing and scalability. So think about computational efficiency. So scalability across multiple health systems. So if you have multiple hospitals, you need to make sure it can be scalable. And then the edge AI and the cloud-based systems, or even the hybrid cloud-based systems, are some of the things we should be thinking about. And then when you have pure cloud-based systems, however, I'm a little afraid of the cybersecurity issues. And so that also brings up a lot of patient safety and HIPAA. So how about some of the parallel processing with GPUs and TPUs to speed up the EKG signal processing so we wouldn't have to be waiting? And then on-premise AI accelerators are things that we should be thinking about. And lastly, at the level of the government, at the level of the society, we have to talk about ethical issues as well as governmental issues and regulatory issues. So patient privacy, data security, algorithmic bias, and fairness. If I have diagnosed somebody as having a disease and in reality they don't, currently the liability is with me as a clinician. But down the road, will it be the liability of the company, of the AI company or the AI algorithm? Or is it going to be the healthcare that's going to be liable or healthcare system? So unless we have really good thought or processes in place, again, scalability of something like this is going to take time. And then are we going to dehumanize the patient care? Is the AI algorithm that we are going to blindly follow dehumanize some of the stuff that we do? And then who is going to own the ownership of the data? Is it going to be the patient? Is it going to be the healthcare system? Especially when it comes to training and retraining the models. And then the other thing that actually also bothers me is, are we going to be using AI as a medical device versus clinical decision support tool? And these are things, regulatory stuff that we need to think about. And how about the post-marketing surveillance? How is AI going to adapt to that? And how are we going to allocate resources? We are already quite strapped with the Medicaid dollars. So again, stuff to think about. As a clinician, but also as a teacher, I think this is really very important. We can utilize AI. It has so much of impact. I can train and educate my fellows. In fact, we have AI built into some of the handheld ultrasound devices, which are being utilized to train our fellows at this point. And the AI system integration is really crucial because we are able to work on some of the processes to analyze the ECG software into the current EHR. And like I mentioned, we do have a few roadblocks. We are hoping to overcome some of that. And we are trying to get the clinical decision support systems in place, just like what Dr. Elias was mentioning earlier. And then obviously continuous improvement is something that we are going to be talking about, especially with the feedback loops that are going to be crucial. So in conclusion, I think AI has immense promise. It has limitless scope. It is extremely transformative. And the future lives in collaborative intelligence. And so far, we have extremely exciting results. And it's going to allow better clinical decision support systems if we can incorporate it successfully. So I think with that, I don't have too much more to add. But so now, thank you.